On the flight back from Pittsburgh on Monday morning at about 8 a.m., Matthew Berry's ordering Diet Cokes.
Like from the steward, like the flight attendant.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't be ordering Diet Cokes at 8 a.m.
That's how he does.
It's got to be his coffee.
Yeah, and then after he asked on the flight for Diet Coke, he asked if there was a platter of chicken tenders available. There wasn't.
Like the Yankee Stadium chicken bucket.
Exactly.
He's like, you have that
The
here.
important thing though is he just only want the chicken tenders, like no sauce, no nothing on them, just straight chicken.
Yep.
Nothing.
That's right. Yeah.
Very special.
Very sick.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Yes, he's back. You caught a lot of bullets.
Well, yeah, a lot of strays there. You know what?
I think they were direct hits.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Here's the issue. Like, it shouldn't have happened, and I'll tell you why it shouldn't have happened. So we're flying back, right, from the thing. And by the way, Jay's absolutely right. Like, I don't drink coffee. So when I need to wake up in the morning, I will drink a diet soda. But that shouldn't have happened. I'll tell you why it shouldn't have happened. I'm sitting in first class, right? I'm sitting in first class. Jay should be in the back of the bus. But somehow, because there were only first class seats available on this particular flight, NBC had to put him in first class so he could observe everything I do. Normally, he's back.
You pull the curtain over?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Jay and pull the curtain.
Yeah, I see Jay, and I'm like, no, use your own bathroom. Absolutely not. You're not up here. Absolutely not. Because, when you're in coach, they don't give you the drink to start. When you're in first class, as people are boarding, they'll come to you and they'll say, hey, would you like a beverage before takeoff? And so I was like, yeah, give me a Diet Coke. I got to wake up here. Because, we got up at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning to do the show.
Late game?
Late, all the way till, super late game. I didn't walk into my hotel 2:30. I had to be up at 6:30 to catch the ride to the airport. So, I'm on 3 hours sleep after a whole day of working, and we've got to come back here to do our Monday show. So, yeah, I wanted a little pick me up. Wake me up. I got to do prep for the Monday show. And, and Jay Croucher shouldn't have been able to see that. It's outrageous.
Look,
problematic.
Look, Matthew, you don't have to explain yourself to anybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
You don't have to explain to people why you drinking Diet Coke at 6:12 a.m. in the morning.
Thank you.
With some chicken wings.
Yeah, the chicken wings are an exaggeration. But I did absolutely.
You got to keep that in the story, though, and make it better.
Okay.
Make the chicken wings.
Yeah, it makes the story pop a little bit.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Definitely.
You know what? I'll tell you what did pop last night, and that's Francisco
Lindor
as Let's Go Mets.
Francisco Lindor.
Francisco Lindor and Mets fans everywhere. You guys all drink for free, and that, of course, includes our own Connor Rodgers, Jay Croucher, backup producer Pete, Matt Casey, all massive Mets fans here
at Grimace Universe.
At the National Broadcasting Company. What?
The Grimace Universe.
And the Grimace Universe, the Grimace Cinematic Universe, the GCU.
You left me out with the Mets fans.
You're not a Mets fan. You're a Braves fan.
I'm one of them.
You're now on the bandwagon? The guy who's wore a Braves cap for 2 years on the show?
Lindor. Let's go, baby.
Let's go, Lindor.
Yeah.
Francisco Lindor drinks free. Let's go, Mets.
I have one last question for you, and then we're going to get to love-hate. I promise you we're going to get to all that for the week. But my last question is, your wife, Kristen, also a massive Mets fan.
Oh, yeah.
So this was a big night in the Rodgers household.
Big deal.
What depraved things did Kristen want to do after the Mets win to go to the championship series? No, you're married, by the way. It's completely fine. Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about throwing budget out the window.
Yeah.
We've seen some of those ticket prices.
All right,
There's
good.
adult conversations to be had.
All right,
we'll see where it goes. We'll see if I'm here next Thursday.
Yeah.
I will be here next Thursday.
Fair enough.
Because it's going to be night games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty wild
We
night
got to
in
get
the
you
Rodgers
there.
house.
We got to get you there. We got to figure some of those things out. I wasn't necessarily talking about conversations, but we can move on. I appreciate you taking it in a different
Love-hate
direction.
day, a lot of love.
Lot of love. God bless you and Kristen. Let's go Mets. I'm happy for you guys.
Let's jump in. We got a lot of love-hate to go through today. And we're going to kick off the love list with the running backs. And starting with a guy that's had a lot of problems this season. He's been a disappointment in fantasy, but Breece Hall. But if you hear from Breece Hall, he doesn't sound discouraged by a tough patch here that the Jets' run game has hit. Take a listen.
If you don't run for 100 yards, people will think you suck or whatever. But it is what it is, man. I just come out, try to be the same guy every day, and just do my job because I know whether we run the ball 10 times or 20 times, we always have a chance to win the game. I'm just thankful to, be around these guys every day and be able to, help these guys fight and keep on fighting, keep on slinging with the team. So just knowing that that's our mentality, that we got that never die mentality, that's one good thing.
The wild week for the New York Jets continues. It started with Robert Saleh being fired after the loss in London. And as we sit here, guys, we have breaking news this morning. Nathaniel Hackett has been demoted. Todd Downing, their pass game coordinator, will now be the play caller for this offense. A guy that's called plays for Tennessee. He did struggle in that role. I think the bar was low, Matthew, with where they were at with Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, nowhere to go but up here
Right.
for Nathaniel Hackett. Some of the rumors that came out after the Saleh firing was that they considered that Woody Johnson considered firing Nathaniel Hackett because, let's be clear, obviously the season hasn't gone the way the Jets wanted to, but the defense has been better than the offense
Done their part.
to date.
Yeah.
They've done their part, and that was the part of the team that Robert Saleh was more involved with. Either way, I think I could put Breece Hall on the love list just because Nathaniel Hackett's not calling plays anymore. But how about this? They're playing the Buffalo Bills on Monday night. Buffalo's allowed the most fantasy points to opposing running backs this season. 5 of the 7 running backs to see the against Bill. 5 of the 7 running backs against the Bills that have seen at least 10 touches scored at least 1 touchdown. Like, you get work against the Bills, you get into the end zone. We obviously expect Breece Hall, especially with a new coordinator in Todd Downing, to get the ball in his most talented players' hands. That includes Breece Hall. By the way, no team in the NFL has allowed more receptions and receiving yards to opposing running backs than the Buffalo Bills. I have him as a top 5 running back play this week. I'm back in on Breece Hall. I know it's been disappointing, but I'm back in.
Yeah, I was never off. You're never considering benching Breece, although like I saw articles online, people saying should like Breece Hall be benched. Like, it's getting crazy out
Braylon
here,
Allen,
right?
yeah.
He's been running back 50 over the past 2 weeks, and as you mentioned, the receptions. The Bills are giving up 7.2 receptions per game to the running back position. And let's be honest, the Bills, they're kind of having their own struggles too. So it's not like the Jets got all the drama, but on the field, both teams are kind of like at a crossroads right now. So yeah, back in on Breece Hall. Don't matter that he rushed for a career low 4 yards a couple weeks ago. It's the NFL. It's hard. He'll get back to it.
And staying with the running backs in this game, one note here, James Cook did not practice on Wednesday. He's dealing with a foot/toe injury. We got to keep an eye on this one throughout the week.
There was a play towards the end of the game where he went on the sideline. He got banged up. I think Ty Johnson came in after that as well. Now, again, it's the Monday night game, so he missed, in essence, a Tuesday practice for them in terms of how their week goes. But certainly, for whatever it's worth, I picked up Ty Johnson in a couple of deeper leagues, including the League of Assholes, just in case. We hope James Cook is fine, but just something I want to put on everyone's radar. Hey, there is a chance that this injury could linger.
So Breece Hall, top 5 play this week.
And I think it would be Ty Johnson over Ray Davis if Cook were to miss time.
I agree with you. They really like Ty Johnson.
Yeah.
So Breece comes in as RB5, not far behind him, Lawrence, for Matthew. Tony Pollard, RB9. The Colts have allowed the 4th most rushing yards to running backs this season.
Yeah, and you just look at what the Titans did the last time they played against the Dolphins. They established the hell out of that run. Tony Pollard, 22 carries, 88 yards and a TD in that game. I think they'll keep that going, especially with whatever's going on at quarterback. They don't know yet who's going to start there. So you look at that, and then you look at the fact that the Colts allow 119 rushing yards per game to the running back position. So when you put that together with the fact that the Titans want to run the ball, you got to feel good about Pollard this week.
It is a great matchup to your point about the Colts. They actually allow 165 yards from scrimmage to opposing running backs. Pollard, of course, used in the passing game as well. They've given up the 4th most rushing yards to opposing running backs. Oh, by the way, Tony Pollard has at least, he's averaging 18.5 touches per game, and he has a double-digit target share in every single game. So Pollard, to your point, I agree with you, Lawrence. They need to take some pressure off the quarterback position in Tennessee. They're going to want to lean on the run, especially in a good matchup against the Colts. Give me Tony Pollard as a top 10 play this week.
Pollard with a great matchup against the Colts. How about Josh Jacobs with an even better matchup against the Cardinals? They've allowed the 2nd most rushing yards to running backs this year.
Yeah, teams facing the Arizona Cardinals are averaging 26.2 running back carries per game. That's 4th most in the NFL, Connor. Running backs with more than 15 touches against Arizona. The reason we bring up that number of like how many running backs and how many carries they get and touches they get against Arizona, because running backs that have at least 15 touches against the Cardinals this year are averaging 17.3 fantasy points per game. I have Josh Jacobs as RB10. He's an RB1 this week. Number 8 in your heart, top 10 on the field.
Yeah, and the numbers aren't just skewed against the Cardinals because someone had a big game. Jordan Mason ran well against them. a couple weeks before that, Jeremy McNichols and Brian
Brian
Robinson
yeah, I was gonna say.
combined for more than 160 rush yards. You see what the Lions running backs did to him. So this is a consistent thing going against this Cardinals defense.
I'm sorry, Brian Robinson, Jeremy McNichols, they play for what team again?
Oh, the Commanders.
Oh, got it. I haven't looked at the standings recently. Do you know where they are in the NFC East?
They're going to win the division.
Let's
Matthew.
go. Let's go.
They are going to win.
Get hyped how
Let's
Connor
go.
is for these Mets right
let's
now.
go.
Right.
Let's
We'll
absolutely.
transition.
Well,
Mets
I'll tell you
baseball.
that. I'll tell you this. If they beat the Ravens, they got it.
If they beat the Ravens, Jaden Daniels' combo is MVP.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, we
That's-
talking
that's
that.
Then
the
it's
big
like, all right,
storyline
you've
that
already
game.
got Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now it's MVP.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm nervous. I mean, they're 6.5-point dogs to Baltimore. Yeah.
I think that was the same spread against the Bengals a couple weeks ago. It was
They've been
like
touchdown dogs before this year.
Yes, they have. They 1,000% have. You know, so I think they were 3.5-point dogs to Arizona, which was ridiculous.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
3.5.
anyway, hail Commanders, hail victory.
Some others receiving votes at running back, David Montgomery, Tank Bigsby, who's starting to take over that Jacksonville backfield, and Tyler Allgeier, Matthew. It's RB 34, but he's got Carolina.
Yeah, and the Panthers have allowed The Panthers have allowed touchdowns to multiple running backs in 3 of 5 games this year. So again, we know Bijan's going to get his, but again, the Panthers in the majority of their games this year have allowed touchdowns to multiple running backs, more than one. So we like Allgeier as a mid-30s play. Tank Bigsby, we've talked about on this show a lot. That's the London game against Chicago. He's actually led the Jags in rushing in back-to-back games this season. 40% of the snaps last week, which was a season high. Bears very quietly allowing 5 yards per carry to opposing running backs. That's tied for third, and they're also tied for the third most rushing touchdowns allowed to running backs, I should say. Dave Montgomery is just so solid, guys. By the way, Dallas, 24th in rush defense. They're tied for the second in terms of most rushing touchdowns allowed to opposing running backs. Montgomery has scored in every game this season, including getting multiple goal line rushes in 3 of 4 games. We always do our touchdown-only bets on fantasy football pregame. And Dave Montgomery, I think, is going to be in the parlay this week. I can sort of guarantee it.
We look at the hate list now. Rhamondre Stevenson tops that. Does not crack the top 20 running backs for Matthew this week. He's got the Texans. Lawrence, we say this almost every week. The Patriots have the lowest implied team total. That's bad news for any of their skill players.
Yeah, and when you're you got Drake May starting. Definitely not Drake London. You got Drake May starting his first game. They're going to try to lean on the run, but it'll be a little tougher now. Rhamondre Stevenson had a good week last week. He was running back 4, but now you're going up against Houston, who's a top 12 defense in terms of defending running backs in fantasy. So it's going to be tougher once again just for the Patriots offense as a whole as they just adjust to having Drake May in there.
I think people may have thought, oh boy, I'm nervous about Rhamondre Stevenson. It's going to be the Antonio Gibson show. Then last week looks better. And you're like, oh, we're back with Rhamondre. And I'm like, no, I don't think you are. I think he's still a sell-high candidate as well. We talked about the lowest implied team total.
Yeah.
By the way, they're also the second biggest underdog this week. They're a touchdown dog. And in the 2 games in which New England has lost by more than 5 points, Rhamondre Stevenson averages under 5 fantasy points per game, 4.1 to be exact. And even though the scoring numbers looked better last week, the truth of the matter is that he played 45% of the snaps last week. That was a season low. He played on only 36% of
That's
pass
the key.
plays.
In a bad script, that hurts him so much more.
So much more. And we don't know, in terms of Drake May, what this offense looks like. Hopefully he gives them a spark, but could that be more to Antonio Gibson? Rhamondre Stevenson, even in a week where we've got a lot of big-name running backs out, we've got 4 teams on a bye, there's some running backs that are banged up as well, I still have Rhamondre Stevenson outside my top 20 for the week.
Stevenson, RB22. Javonte Williams right behind him as RB23. He's got the Chargers. I mean, right now, Matthew, we said this about New England. We go right to Denver. They have the second lowest implied team total in Week 6. There's no expectations for this offense.
None whatsoever. And I think very quietly people don't realize that 64% of Javonte Williams' fantasy points this year have come as a receiver. I mean, we know Bo Nix does not like to chuck it down the field. He is much more of a short passer. And so Javonte Williams has been involved a lot as a pass catcher for this Broncos offense. Again, 64% of his points have come as receiver. Why do I bring this up? Because that is somewhere that the Chargers excel. L.A. allowing a league-low 4.2 yards per reception to opposing running backs. Jim Harbaugh has had 2 weeks to prepare for this suddenly I don't want to say red hot, but suddenly on a roll.
Very
Denver Broncos
feisty
offense,
Broncos team.
feisty. That's a good word to put it. They're feisty.
They are.
Are they the Mets of the NFL?
Nah, not there yet.
Okay,
Let's see if
fair
they can make the
enough.
playoffs.
They're not that feisty.
they
but,
could be.
They could be. Like the outlook for the Broncos looks a lot better today than it did like after week 2.
Their defense is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They're up
They're-
there.
And give Knicks credit. Like Knicks was super gutty against the Buccaneers, I would say, in that week 3 game. Like
Decision making's better.
Yeah,
he
he's-
can move a little bit. It's not a disaster.
it's not a
Considering
disa-
what he's working with, he's not throwing at Justin Jefferson out there.
No, he is certainly not. Look, there are teams with worse quarterback situations than the Denver
Yeah, the
Broncos.
Browns.
That's one of them. That's one of them. That is certainly one of them. Anyway, Javonte Williams outside my top 20 for the week.
Oh, go ahead, Lawrence.
Nah, just real quick, the Chargers defense has allowed 1 rushing touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown to running backs, and the over-under's 35.5. So don't expect much.
I
a lot of
generally,
defense.
I generally don't. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but just when there's a couple of rules that I sort of use as tiebreakers when I'm trying to decide between certain things. One of them is just like, environment. Like, are they on a team with a good quarterback, a good offensive environment, high-scoring game, that kind of thing. Another thing is just talent.
Right.
Just be like, I get it that this guy's getting goal line touches, but that guy's just a much better running back or whatever. And a third one that I will use sometimes is just in terms of matchup, obviously. I tend to favor defenses that have had 2 weeks to prepare, especially if it's a home game. Now this game's in Denver, but generally speaking, like they've had 2 weeks. Jim Harbaugh and his staff have had 2 weeks to prepare for the Denver Broncos, and so generally speaking, like I don't like to go against that where they've had extra time to prepare. Or on the offensive side, I like that when they've had 2 weeks to prepare. Like I think the Chargers offense will look better this week off of the bye, than they have generally speaking.
Makes for a tough matchup for Javonte Williams. Rico Dowdle has it even worse, Lawrence. He's got Detroit's defense. They're allowing the 4th fewest rush yards per game to running backs right now. It's great that he's getting some of the volume, but it doesn't look like he'll be very efficient with it in this game.
Yeah, he had a good game last week against Pittsburgh, who I guess at some time we'll talk about their defense, running defense more in the future. But
Karma.
Yeah.
It's karma, Lawrence. It's karma.
Yeah.
It's because
mean security guards.
It's the mean security guards at Acrisure Stadium. That is cause
You
see
damn
this,
right.
Right,
You damn
thank
right
you.
it is.
Lawrence was there too.
We
by
haven't
the way.
actually gotten
Yeah.
your perspective on this.
Right. Yeah. Like Jay was there. Lawrence was there. George the Greek. George Savarikas was there. You were not there.
I was not
But
there.
Lawrence, you were there.
Yeah.
Did I exaggerate at all, or was this guy an a-hole?
It was wild.
Wow.
It was like I'm like, is it really that big of a deal? That's just what's going on in my mind as I'm seeing everything played out. I ain't really caring. I'm chilling, But I'm thinking like, damn, like they making my man jump through these type hoops.
They're yelling at him.
Yeah,
Jay, they were
Jay
yelling at
didn't
me.
defend you like this, by the way.
No, well, that's why I like Lawrence and I don't like Jay.
Because it just was, it seemed, the whole situation seemed petty.
Yep.
You know
And
what I mean?
unnecessary.
Excessive.
We just want to hang out.
Yeah.
That's it. We ain't doing nothing in, what they call the stadium now?
Acrisure State.
That's always
Yeah.
Hines.
I thought it
But
was.
the big point that I brought
yeah.
up was, regardless of all that, just my point was that the guy could have just said like, "Hey, I can't let you in," or whatever, or your credential doesn't allow you, even though we'd been invited. It was a whole thing. Like we'd been invited to this area, and the person that was inviting us was like, "It's my area, and I want to bring them in." They're like, "Yes, but you have to get that area, you have to go through this hallway, and it's my hallway, and you can't go in my hallway." And they're like, we literally can't just walk down the hallway. And anyway, but my point was, he started yelling at us. Like it was just like, get out of my hallway. This is my place. You're blocking my door. And we're like, what the hell, man?
I mean,
Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Listen,
again.
look.
And that is why the Steelers defense sucks. I'm just telling you.
I'm not a tall dude. I'm 5'8", right? So
Yeah.
he was probably a couple inches shorter than me. So he might have had that Napoleon complex.
Yeah.
Like he didn't get to be on a team when he was a little kid or in high school. So
This is
now
his moment.
he got
It's
this
his
little
moment.
job.
He
He
was-
like,
moment.
he
He
like
was-
stop.
He was 3 to 4 inches shorter than you, but he was probably 100 pounds heavier than you.
Yeah, see, I wasn't even gonna throw in that part.
Oh, I
but,
will. F that guy. F that guy. But by the way, I've invited him to be in the League of Assholes next year because
Well,
he
he'll fit in
fits
great.
in.
Yeah.
He absolutely fits in.
Whoever the nicest person in the league is out.
But you saw that grandmother that tried to talk trash to Lamar Jackson, and Lamar was like, "It's gonna be your fault," and then it was right. Like you saw that. That's why Pittsburgh lost. Is that security guard? I'm just telling you right now.
I could get with that.
Security guard makes the hate list. That's our last hate list member of running backs. So we moved to pass
And by the way,
catchers.
I just one last stat on Rico Dowdle real quickly.
Okay, I almost forgot we were talking
Ken
about
Walker.
him.
Yeah, we were talking about Ken Walker. Talk about Rico Dowdle against the Steelers. He plays Detroit this week. over the last 21 games, since the start of last season, over the last 21 games, the only running back to rush for at least 70 yards against the Lions is Ken Walker. All due respect to Rico Dowdle, you ain't Ken Walker. So,
Detroit
21 games.
allows the 7th fewest fantasy points to running backs. It's a tough start for Rico.
Yeah.
We move over to the pass catchers for love-hate here. And after an absolute monster week, of course, Drake London kicks this thing off. But Drake London, he called it before the game even happened. Take a listen to Drake. This was before the monster Thursday Night Football performance.
I mean, you know, we have a new dude throwing the pill back there, so there's a bunch of stuff that's different. We have new head coaches, we got new OC, so there's a lot of things that we have to get in order and to gel, you know. So it's going to take some time, but I think we're on the verge of that, and we're ready to finally have the breakout games that we know we can have.
Boy, was he right. Drake London, a 28.5% target share over his last 4 games. This is the Drake London season, Matthew, that we've been waiting for, and he's got a quarterback now to guide him there.
He's averaging 10 targets per game over the last 4, a 28.5% target share. Why do I bring up the target share? Why do I bring up the fact that he's getting at least 10 targets a game? Well, because wide receivers that have seen at least 7 targets against Carolina, averaging 18.3 fantasy points per game. They've, in fact, allowed multiple touchdowns to wide receivers in 3 of the past 4. I have him at wide receiver 4 today, or this week.
Dude's balling. Double-digit targets in 2 straight games. Carolina's giving up 8 receiving touchdowns to receivers this year. That's tied for second most in the NFL this year. And Drake London himself has scored 3 of the 4 games. He's on his way to being a touchdown machine, a yak machine, a target machine. Matthew mentioned the target share, so we definitely love Drake London this week.
Another top 10 receiver this week, Terry McLaurin. It was a slow start to the season for Terry McLaurin, but Lawrence, over the last 3 games, he's got a 30% target share in an offense that's really starting to throw the ball well with Jaden Daniels there.
Yeah, I just mentioned how Carolina has 8 receiving touchdowns, tied for second in the NFL to receivers. The team they're tied with is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens, they look great on offense. They look great on run defense. But in pass defense, they can be had, and that's the reason that this over-under for this game is 52.5. Terry McLaurin himself, like you said, he's gotten going. Versus this Baltimore team that's the second worst against receivers in fantasy, I look for it to continue. The DBs need help.
No team in the NFL has allowed more catches to wide receivers. They've also given up the second most yards on deep passes as well. So Terry McLaurin is a top 7 wide receiver for me this week in a shootout with the Ravens. 30% target share for Terry McLaurin. 30%. This will be a fascinating game because the one thing I will say is that if there's a defense that should be able to understand and stop Jaden Daniels, it's the Ravens, because they see that in essence every week and every day in practice, because the quarterback that's most like Jaden Daniels in the NFL is Lamar. Yeah. Having said that, though, and I'm not saying Jaden Daniels is Lamar. Lamar is, a 2-time and look like he's on his way to a 3rd MVP. Yeah. It's a very unique skill set, but he's the most similar. Like you can't whatever. Like Joe Flacco can't impersonate Jaden Daniels. Certainly not. So anyway, I can't wait for that game.
That's game of the week, right?
Yeah,
that got to be the game of the week.
Detroit and Dallas is also a pretty good game, as well. And of course, Bengals Giants on Sunday Night Football. Awesome game.
The London, you know what else?
I'm a company man.
It is.
You know what else? Hey, Giants have won a couple in a row. Malik Neighbors is a star. Joe Burrow's a star. Jamar Chase. We got
T. Higgins is back.
T. Higgins is back.
You want points.
Yeah, we want
Sunday Night Football is scoring.
It's gonna be a lot of scoring.
You left the name out of there. It's kind of disrespectful, but it's cool.
Wandell Robinson.
Nope.
Daniel Jones.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Tyrone Tracy on prime time.
No, go back.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Now we're talking.
Tyrone Tracy,
Theo
Daniel
Johnson.
Jones. That's what I'm here for.
Theo Johnson.
Eric Gray.
Eric Gray. We'll see. Singletary return practice, by the way, that's also one to watch out for, because if Tracy gets another start, we like him. No, I know. And Zach Moss is banged up. Anyway, we'll go through all the injuries tomorrow.
We also got another London game, the Bears against the Jags. DJ Moore's a top 15 play at wide receiver 14 here, Matthew. Jacksonville has allowed the most yards and the most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. We do need to keep an eye on when their top corner, Tyson Campbell, will be active for a game, but that's not going to completely fix this struggling defense.
DJ Moore has at least a 20% target share in every game this season. Wide receivers who have seen a 20% target share against the Jaguars, averaging 18.2 fantasy points per game. So, we've talked about this. We think the Jaguars actually have a decent run defense. It's the secondary where you attack them. Caleb Williams getting better week after week, and when he's looking for somebody, he's looking for DJ Moore.
Yeah, they're the Jacksonville Jaguars DBs is getting smoked. They've allowed the most yards per game, 210 to receivers. Like that's kind of a lot. They've allowed the second most receptions to them as well. So like you say, run game, little decent, but pass defense, like the Baltimore Ravens, need some help.
Yes.
We got a tight end on the love list, and Trey McBride, Lawrence, at least 28% target share in 3 of his 4 games played. He's just got to be healthy, and Trey McBride's effective.
Yeah, it was nice to see him get back going last week. Led the team in targets with 9. Was only tight end 13, but he didn't get the touchdown. But still, to see him in with 6 catches for 53 yards, that was promising for him.
Some others receiving votes here. Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Matthew, Jalen Tolbert, Michael Wilson, and K. Dotton, Mr. 8 points a week. K. Dotton, which is good for a tight end right now.
20% target share over his last 3 games, and over the last month, the Saints have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. I thought it was going to be the human Dortch in Arizona, and maybe it still will be, but very quietly, Michael Wilson has 3 straight games with at least a 20% target share. That should be a little bit of a sneaky shootout as the Packers have allowed the 8th most yards to wide receivers. You mentioned Tolbert again. We don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. Dallas is going to have to throw against the Lions, and it's worth noting Detroit's allowed the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers. So Tolbert off the big game last week is a top 40 play for me this week. Tank Dell, again, we've talked about this Nico Collins injury situation. He's going to miss a few weeks as well. Deeper league guys, Xavier Hutchinson, I think he'll get more run, but hopefully the expectation here is that Tank Dell should get a lot more routes, a lot more targets, a lot more snaps with Nico Collins out. That's a 29% target share that is suddenly freed up with Nico Collins not able to play. It's worth noting that Dell last year, in the 6 games in which he got at least 7 targets, he scored in all 6 and averaged 23.4 fantasy points per game. They're at New England, and that'd be interesting. I mean, do you think Christian Gonzalez is on Tank Dell? They're not going to put him in the slot against Stephon Diggs.
I think he might follow Diggs a little bit with a safety to help.
Right. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they play that out. And Diggs obviously can play outside as well, and they'll move Dell in sometimes. They'll try to get creative.
That's the key. Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if Gonzalez just follows whoever the top guy is on the outside. At the end of the day, I mean, simple as this. This is what you've been waiting for if you have Tank Dell. Like, this is the time.
He's too good to have been this bad. I think he's viable. And last one, Lawrence, Zay Flowers. We saw the big game. In games in which the Ravens have been competitive, Zay Flowers has been great. It's just when they blow teams out, I don't think they blow out my Commanders.
Yeah, this game could be interesting because I remember the Lions last year got rolling. They went to Baltimore and just got destroyed. Like, a little bit of me is feeling like that for the Commanders, but it's like Jaden Daniels is just he's precise. He's making right decisions, and he's not Jared Goff. If you get pressure, he could get out of that, right? But for Zay Flowers, though, like you said, he's getting double-digit targets. It's what we expected in the Bengals game from them, right? So if he gets those double-digit targets, he's either getting you the yards or he's going to get a touchdown. So gotta love him as well.
Commanders have already allowed at least 15 fantasy points to 6 different wide receivers. Zay Flowers with a 25% target share in every game this year.
So the Commanders are good, but they're good for that too.
They're good for that too. The one thing I will say you're right about Jaden Daniels, and I could see if you tell me whatever happened, I could believe they go in there and the Ravens just blow them out the way they did with the Bills. I could see the Commanders winning this game. I could see it being a close game and the Ravens win a close one at home. Justin Tucker kicks a 60-yard at the gun. Whatever. I will say the one thing that's interesting here is that it's not only that Jaden Daniels is playing so well for himself, it's that he's got the entire team believing. This is a team that, like, defensively, we've got a lot of the guys there, the Daron Paynes, the Jonathan Allens, the guys that have been there, they've seen sort of like, here we go again.
Right.
And now I think on the sideline, everyone else is like, faith in 5.
That's the Dan Quinn effect, too.
Yeah, faith in 5. Dan Quinn 100% is a rah-rah guy. And give Cliff Kingsbury credit. I was skeptical. I think a lot of people were like, really? Cliff, didn't seem to work out in Arizona. And It's the offense has been
maybe
special.
he's just better suited as a
coordinator?
offensive coordinator,
That's right.
kind of like a guy like Arthur Smith. Some guys are just, they're better off calling the plays.
100%. That was always my argument with Norv Turner. Norv Turner is one of the best offense coordinators in history. But, the consistency as a head coach wasn't there.
Because you lose the time you once had to allocate it all to one thing. That's the problem. We just went over this with Robert Saleh getting fired this week.
Yeah.
He's really one of the best defensive minds in the NFL.
Sure.
He was a really bad head coach because he started to allocate times to things he wasn't good at anymore.
Right.
It's just the curse of going from coordinator to head coach and not being ready
Yeah,
for
and
it.
some people are better as head coaches, some people are better as
at Dan
coordinators.
Campbell.
For sure. Yeah.
He's the opposite.
Yes.
Perfect CEO of a team.
Perfect CEO of a team, yeah.
All right, we get to the hate list here.
like that
Calvin
call.
Ridley tops that at wide receiver 35. I mean, Matthew, the Calvin Ridley season is just insane right now. He is yet to see a red zone or end zone target this season. He had the one big touchdown against the Jets that we said earlier in the week probably should have been picked off, and it feels like he hasn't made any other plays besides that.
The offense is it's been a struggle, obviously, for Tennessee. The quarterback position hasn't produced the way they want it to. And what's weird is that he's got 4 or fewer receptions in every game this year, targeted on only 16% of his routes. His average depth of target is 19.5. And you're like, well, they're chucking to him deep. Sure, but they're not giving me any of the easy stuff. Like, he's not getting any bubble screens, any quick slants, anything. No. Like, it's none of the easy stuff. And only 61% of his targets so far this year have been catchable. We thought signing the big free agent contract that he was going to be the focal point of this offense, and it just hasn't gone the way the Titans would like for Brian Callahan. Now, they are off the bye. Hopefully they spent 2 weeks kind of cleaning up and fixing this passing offense, and I'm sure that Brian Callahan knows that if they're going to get anywhere, Calvin Ridley's got to be a part of it. But you don't feel great about this matchup against Indianapolis, especially because you heard us talk up Tony Pollard early in the show. We think Tennessee's going to be able to run the ball very well, and they play good defense. Again, their defense has had 2 weeks to prepare for a home game against the Colts.
Like, I would feel decent about this going against the Colts defense if the passing game was more in order. Like, we just saw the Colts defense get lit up by Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, and they had been struggling.
This is fair.
They had been struggling all year until they got to the Colts, but you just can't trust it when you know Ridley's out there, and outside of that 40-yard touchdown catch, which you said was a bad throw, right? He would have like almost no fantasy points, and that's scary to think about.
But Lawrence, the argument here is that I think that's a great point. But Trevor Lawrence is somebody who is like, one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, former #1 overall pick, somebody that has had success at the NFL level, led his team to a playoff victory and a massive comeback. He's struggled somewhat this year, but Trevor Lawrence has played at a high level in this league on a pass-first offense. So the fact that he was able to sort of get off the schneid against the Colts makes sense, whereas whether it's Will Levis or somebody else starting for the Titans, they have not had that level of success. And I don't know that the Titans, again, we thought coming to the season Callahan wanted to be more pass-first, but you could see them sitting here saying like, hey, we got a young quarterback that's still finding his groove. Let's take some pressure off of him. We feel good about our defensive matchups. Right. Let's just run the hell out of the ball with Tony Pollard. Let's give Will Levis,
that's what's gonna happen.
That's what I think. And so
he gave away the ball so much in the first 2 weeks.
Exactly.
He handed the Jets the game in week 2 after a tough turnover in week 1. They want to take the ball out of his hands.
Well, right, and just be like, dude, you don't have to win the game.
Yes.
Like, don't put it all on your shoulder. That's, I think, like, listen, I'm a Will Levis stan, so I'm not going to sit here and trash on the kid. I'll just say that, if his biggest flaw is he's just trying too hard, like, I'll take that, right? Because you can learn that, right?
Yes.
I mean, again, he's a gutty kid. Like, no one can, guy puts it out there on the line. Anyway, I'm rooting for Will Levis, but Calvin Ridley makes the hate list this week.
In this same game, keep an eye on the injuries, specifically on the Colts side. This is a scary injury report right now. As Anthony Richardson, he's still dealing with the oblique. He was limited on Wednesday. Jonathan Taylor with that ankle. He didn't practice Wednesday. Trey Sermon with a collarbone. He didn't practice Wednesday. New news that we did not have when we were doing our show yesterday. Michael Pittman Jr. with a back injury. He's expected to miss multiple weeks now.
Yeah, and obviously
Josh Downs,
although you
Definitely
feel better about
Josh Downs.
You feel we all like Josh Downs the most in terms of a talent perspective here, and I would agree with you. Like Josh Downs, will be, regardless of who's at quarterback, Josh Downs will be my highest ranked Colts wide receiver. But depending on the quarterback, like if it's Richardson, they're probably going to take more deep shots than they will Flacco. I feel better about Downs if Flacco's under center than I do with Richardson, because I think Richardson is more prone to take off and run. He's more prone to take a deep shot to like Alec Pierce or A.D. Mitchell. So I still think Downs is the most talented guy, but I think where I would rank him in the overall will be higher if Flacco's under center versus Richardson, at least at this point.
Lawrence, quick one for you. Do you think they just have refused to get Adonai Mitchell involved in this offense? Do you think Pittman being out forces the hand now?
It will a little bit, but I kind of see it as the same situation with Xavier Worthy and the Chiefs. They're just two young guys. We know they can run the full route tree, but they're still trying to find their way in their respective offenses, and that's proven by Juju going off and by Alec Pierce going off again.
Yeah, and what do you think of Mitchell? Because I've seen different reports on him so far this year that some people are saying, like, listen, he's doing great. Like my buddy Scott Barrett talks about how much separation he's getting.
Right.
Shout out to Scott. But also like he's not earning targets, right?
Right.
And there's some people that thought he was more of a raw prospect.
He was. He has the talent of a number one wide receiver. The size, the speed, the movement skills. This was someone that had some success at Georgia. He transferred to Texas. He was very productive at Texas, but consistency was always the problem. There was some times where he was just coasting through routes or not as sharp through routes. I think the Colts, just like Lawrence hinted at, don't want to throw everything on his plate right now. They see him as a developmental, high upside prospect that they don't need to play unless they have to. So I wouldn't expect a lot this year, personally, for Mitchell.
Fair enough.
Maybe
There'll probably be some splashy plays.
Splashy plays, but not a guy that gets 5 to 6 targets a game, even with an injury.
We are, as a show, we are all team Josh Downs.
That's right. Lad McConkey also makes the hate list. Denver has allowed the second fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this year. I mean, Lawrence, nobody wants to see Surtain. And this is a team that doesn't really throw the ball that great to begin with.
So don't nobody want to see Riley Moss either.
He's balling right now.
Don't nobody want to see him.
That's what I say. It's not Surtain gets the headlines, but that whole secondary's been great.
Moss has been awesome this year.
Yeah, they balling. In Denver, like you said, good defense. They're second against receivers in fantasy. You look at the game total here, 35.5. It just doesn't measure up to wanting to start any of these receivers in this game when both teams want to run the football.
This is a rock fight, Matthew.
It really is. The Broncos have yet to allow a touchdown to the slot this season. That's obviously where McConkey runs the majority of his routes as well. So, yeah, he's wide receiver 34 for me this week, But better days are ahead for McConkey. We like him.
Once upon a time, Matthew, we thought this was the Jameson Williams breakout year, and while it's still been good, the target share is down 12% over his last 2 games.
Yeah, and as Sam Laporta's getting healthier, he's getting more involved. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's not going away. Oh, by the way, this is a team that wants to run the ball. It's a run-first offense. I think it's because Amon-Ra is so great, because we've seen them get into some shootouts as their defense over the years is, getting better, but, they weren't always there. But it's a team that ultimately, under Dan Campbell, wants to run the ball. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. And so when you're running the ball a lot, you're just not throwing. And so to your point about the 12% target share, you don't feel great about Jameson Williams going against a Dallas defense that is top 10 in terms of fewest fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. And they allow the lowest completion rate on deep passes, which is a big part, obviously, of Jameson Williams' game. He's my wide receiver 36 for me this week.
Our last one, Lawrence, Evan Engram right now, he's going to be back this week or expected to be back, but the Bears have been a top 5 defense against tight ends in fantasy.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to say to bench Evan Engram, but you should temper with the expectations. A guy who's been out for 4 games over the past 4 weeks. The Bears have allowed the 4th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. So just if you got him in there, I understand, but you're going to have to temper the expectations there.
Yeah, he's missed 4 games. And to your point about the Bears defense, Lawrence, Bears top 10 in terms of fewest receptions, yards, and catch rate allowed to opposing tight ends. They have defended the position very, very well. So Evan Engram, I think he is, again, the tight end position is what it is. So you probably have to start Engram because you don't have better options, but I would lower expectations. He's more in that 10 to 12 range than the top 5 to 6 range he was drafted in for at least this week.
This Sunday night, don't miss Joe Burrow and the Bengals travel east for a date with Dexter Lawrence and the New York Giants.
Ah, man, Malik Neighbors doesn't get a graphic? Come on,
why ain't the quarterback on there for the Giants?
Yeah. Where's Tyrone Tracy? I mean, Lawrence is good,
how about Darius Slayton on there? Coverage of the matchup in the Meadowlands begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Love-hate continues with the quarterbacks right after this.
Dun, 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 dun.
You're well rested. We love to see it.
How's your relationship with Darnell Mooney all the last few months?
He's another guy I think who likes a good voice memo from me. I think he texted me after the Saints game maybe. He just sent like a question mark or something. I think what he was saying was, "What are your thoughts?" So I voice memoed him, and I think he liked that. He sent, I don't know what the exact text was, but it wasn't long. It wasn't long. I'll get back to you, Mark, on what exactly he sent. But it was basically just like a so ... like just trying to get my thoughts, something like that. It wasn't you up, but it was something like that.
Love-hate continues.
Yeah. Lawrence has gotten some of those texts from me.
Yeah?
You up?
Oh, yeah?
You up?
On a
Yeah.
voice memo?
Not on a voice memo.
I'm very
no.
That would be
thankful.
something
I'm very
else.
thankful for no voice memos.
No, I don't do the
asking
voice
you.
memos.
Yeah.
Voice memos is tough.
It's weird.
It's long. Communicating in voicemails is generally weird.
I have one.
It's not surprising Kirk Cousins does that, though.
I have one friend who is, and I'm not going to, but I have a friend who's well known. He's a celebrity, and all he communicates in is voice memos. I'll tell you guys off air.
I know who this is.
Yeah, it's the weirdest. It's the weirdest thing.
Yes.
And
I've heard one, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
Yeah, but it's right anyway.
I'm gonna start sending y'all voicemails.
Yeah, you do it.
Shock
Lean into
y'all
the bit.
one day. Yeah.
Lean to the bit. Kirk
Right.
Cousins makes the love list, by the way. Carolina is allowing touchdown passes at the second highest rate.
What's not to love about Kirk Cousins' top 5 implied team total for your Falcons, Lawrence Jackson? The Carolina Panthers allow 18.6 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, 6th most. In fact, every single game this year, they've given up multiple touchdown passes. So I have Cousins at QB3. QB3, Lawrence, what world do we live in?
Oh, well,
but yeah.
A normal one if you're going against this Panthers defense who's allowed the most passing touchdowns this season. And shout out to Kirk Cousins, who after week 1, we was a little nervous. He didn't look that healthy, but he done got it going. He was quarterback 25 going into week 5, and he changed that up and was quarterback 1 last week. So having him quarterback 3 here versus the Carolina Panthers is very warranted.
How about Joe Burrow on Sunday Night Football?
Yes,
Lawrence? It's
right here on NBC and Peacock.
That's right, man. That point total is going to be very high when it all settles on DraftKings. Over the past 4 weeks, Lawrence, Burrow is QB2 in points per game. He's gotten rolling after that awful game against New England.
Yeah, and the key thing here in this matchup against the Giants is they got a good front 7, but opponents are averaging 72% of their passes completed against this Giants secondary. And the thing about the Bengals is defense bad, so offense must be good, and it is good. It's great with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. They come right back at you every possession. So if it keeps up like this for the Bengals defense, Joe Burrow is probably a top 3 to 5 quarterback the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you heard Connor just say, like, so far, in the last month, he's a top 2 fantasy quarterback. By the way, this offense has been pass heavy, partially because they have to, because of game script, because their defense. But yeah, they're 3rd in the NFL in terms of pass rate over expected. And to your point, like, who would you rather be throwing to if you're a quarterback than the weapons he has there? Joe Burrow, proud fantasy life investor, Joe Burrow. By the way, their run game is banged up. We'll see the status of Zach Moss as we get further into the week as well. But that gives another credence to the fact that, hey, it just might be all on Joe Burrow's shoulders.
It's been a tough go of it for the Dallas offense, Matthew, but Dak Prescott makes the love list because it feels like the Lions are going to make him throw the ball.
When they play it, yeah, there's no question about it. Teams that face the Detroit Lions this year averaged 39.5 pass attempts per game, right? That's 3rd most in the NFL. Lions 27th in the NFL in pass defense. They're 4th in rush defense. Again, we talked about one of the reasons we don't like Rico Dowdle this week. Since the start of last season, Dak Prescott is averaging over 24 fantasy points per game at home. And this is the highest game total in week 6. The line is 52 is the over-under here. So we expect a lot of fireworks on both sides of the ball. You guys know I'm not the hugest Dak fan, but this week I think he's a rock-solid top 8 fantasy play.
What if he was a proud fantasy life investor?
I'm going to tell you a true story. I'm going to tell you a real quick story. I know the person that manages Dak's money, right? And so and he has another client that is an investor to me at Fantasy Life. and he said, do you want me to present this to Dak as well? And I said, the opportunity to invest in fantasy life, and I said no, because I think that would be disingenuous. Like, again, I think Dak Prescott is an awesome human being. Like, he's done a lot of great stuff for the community, but I just said, I've sort of been fairly negative of him as a player, and I don't want to be in that awkward position where
you would have to do a lot of deleting.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be disingenuous, and I said, no, please don't present the opportunity to him. By the way, Dak's doing just fine. He doesn't need the investment. He's made plenty of money. He's got a couple of bucks.
Shout out to Dak.
But my point is that, like, I had the opportunity to at least see if he wanted to invest, and I turned it down.
I respect it, because a lot of folks would be, it's like talking trash about an athlete, but then when you ask, you're like, hey, how do you do?
No, exactly. No. Like, the athletes we have on the list are all people that I'm, fans of professionally and personally.
Some others receiving votes. Geno Smith on Thursday Night Football against the Niners. It's been a good run for Geno in these four of his 5 games this season. And Caleb Williams, who's really gotten it going here, Matthew. He comes in as QB 15.
Jaguars are the worst pass defense in the NFL. They allow the 3rd highest passer rating. They've also allowed the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Caleb, a couple of back-to-back games with over 300 yards passing. And Geno, we can talk about this in the next segment, but San Francisco allows the 5th most yards per completion. He's had at least 17 fantasy points, Geno has, in every game this year but one. I think he'll have to put up points against the Niners.
All right, let's go to the hate list, headlined by Trevor Lawrence in that London game. It's a pretty simple one here, Lawrence. The Bears have allowed the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this season.
Yeah, and he don't like going to London either. 13.7 fantasy points.
He goes a lot.
Yeah, he don't like going. They might move over there. So 0 games with multiple touchdown passes over there.
Every quarterback that's faced the Bears this year, except for one, has scored under 7 fantasy points. That includes Anthony Richardson. That includes Matthew Stafford. That includes, a kind of red-hot Andy Dalton, a medium-warm Andy Dalton. Yeah. He's outside my top 18 as well. And even though Nathaniel Hackett's been fired, I still don't know that it turns around for Aaron Rodgers against the Buffalo Bills. He's been below 12 fantasy points in 3 out of 5 games this year. Buffalo allowing the 3rd fewest yards per completion. They're top 5 in fewest yards per attempt. And so Kyler Murray, C.J. Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, all held to under 16 fantasy points by the Bills. I think Rodgers is as well. He's merely my QB 20 for this week. But you know what time it is, boys? It is time for Jameson Choose Your Lineup. That's right. It's time to choose your lineup, brought to you by our friends at Jameson. Join our unofficial call to try to get pro football to Dublin. Just visit jamesonsports.com for more information. I got a quarterback and 3 flex plays that can help you win your Week 5 matchup. We can start with the aforementioned Daniel Jones. Danny Dimes going up against the Bengals very quietly. At least 18 fantasy points in 3 of the past 4 for Daniel Jones. Bengals defense, we've talked about a lot this show. They allow the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I have Jones as a top 12 play this week. How about proud Fantasy Life investor Austin Ekeler? Okay, he's very quietly had double-digit fantasy points in every game this year, and the Commanders, my beloved Commanders, are the 3rd biggest underdog this week. Baltimore, top 10 in terms of most receiving yards allowed to opposing running backs. They have a very good run defense. Might be tough sledding for Brian Robinson, and it's much more of an Austin Ekeler game this weekend. How about Darnell Mooney? We heard Kirk Cousins talking about his wide receiver earlier in the show. I have Mooney at wide receiver 24 because he's had at least a 24% target share in 3 of the last 4, averaging over 18 fantasy points per game in that stretch. By the way, over the last 2 games, Lawrence, 55% of his targets have been on deep passes. Kirk likes to look for him deep, and they have been connecting. And finally, I'm going back to the Commanders at tight end. Zach Ertz, very quietly, leads the team in red zone targets. He's 2nd overall in targets. And this is a good matchup against the Ravens, as Baltimore is bottom 3 in the NFL, I should say. They are bottom 3 in the NFL in terms of most catches and most yards allowed to opposing tight ends. So how about Zach Ertz, 2nd to Jaden Daniels in command? Terry McLaurin gets the most targets, but Zach Ertz is the guy he looks for the 2nd most on a team and a game in which they're going to have to throw, as we talked about. They are underdogs in this one.
One of the biggest matchups of the college football season kicks off on Saturday night. Both Ohio State and Oregon have national title hopes, and they'll battle it out under the lights in Eugene. Coverage of the Top 5 Showdown begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. That's right, a Top 5 Showdown.
Look at that, 2 versus 3. Gets better than that.
That's going to be awesome. What a game for NBC to have on Saturday night. We'll still have our best bets for Thursday. Thursday night. Coming up next, Niners Seahawks. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It's time for last call. That was a good one, fellas.
Yeah. I keep pitching to DraftKings, like, it's like, hey, that crown, guess who it is? It's yours, but they don't like that. They don't think it's as good. Or just like, you'd be wondering, have you wondered who has the crown? And then turns out it is yours.
You should pull it out from under the table.
Anyway, I keep pitching that, and they don't like it.
Maybe we should just make a song or something.
Yeah, we're close. We're doing our own
Harmonize
jingle.
like how we did just there.
Here's the most bet player props for Thursday Night Football tonight. Lawrence, as we see a lot of Brock Purdy and overall 49ers on this board, what do you like in this game?
Yeah, well, I like Kenneth Walker to score a touchdown. That's -125, actually. When you look at this game total, it's actually at 49, and you might be thinking, well, two, kind of supposedly good defenses. But no, I think on each team, both of their offenses have been better than their defenses this season. And not to mention, this is a pivotal game for both because as the Seahawks, you got a chance to go up 2 games. Niners, you can't get in that 4-loss hole, especially against this Seahawks team. But so because I think some points should be scored, I expect each running back to score, but I'll go with Kenneth Walker at -125.
That's also my best bet. By the way, a member of Live at Noon in the Cock, Ken Walker. We need him big this week because you beat me by whatever it was, 0.14 points or whatever it was last week. So
Shout
annoying.
out to Jaleel McLaughlin.
Oh, my God, so annoying. But give me Ken Walker over 19.5 receiving yards. First off, he's had at least 35 receiving yards in each of the last 2 games. So far this year, he's got an almost 14% target share. And it's worth noting the Niners have allowed the 8th most receiving yards to opposing running backs. So they're strong up the middle, but I do think Walker, who's being used a lot and playing a ton of snaps at receiver and in the passing game, gets over the 19.5 receiving yards number candidly pretty easily.
I'll take something from the 49ers side. How about George Kittle alt receptions? 5+ is +115.
Yeah.
Kittle is good for 5 to 6 catches a week. He's healthy. He's ready to roll. And I think he's had some rough games against the Seahawks. He's ready to roll.
He's ready to roll. He's actually had some big games
Big
against
George
the Seahawks
Kittle
as
night
well.
ahead.
Big George. Hey, that music means it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I'll be coming to you from Tuscaloosa tomorrow.
Woo!
I'm heading to Alabama. For Lawrence, for Connor, and Francisco Lindor, I'm Matthew Berry. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck tonight and Thursday Night Football. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.